Hi everyone, this is Jennifer from Auburn Yoga and Pilates. Welcome or welcome back. We are going to do a yin and restorative practice tonight. So I hope that you'll join us. Please grab some props. So even if you don't have a traditional yoga bolster or yoga blocks at your house, you can still practice this. Just grab some pillows, maybe some towels or blankets that you can use. Okay, we'll get started. So we'll start off in a comfortable seated position, and you can sit on something to elevate your hips to make it more comfortable if you're not comfortable sitting directly on the floor. You want to be able to really lengthen your spine. So if you feel restricted in any way at all, I'd really encourage you to sit on something that's going to lift your hips up. And then you want to take a deep exhale, relax those shoulders away from those ears, relax those legs down toward the floor. And we're going to begin focusing on our breath. So inhaling through your nose, all the air you can fit. And then exhaling slowly out your mouth. Filling back up, inhaling through your nose, all the air you can fit. Exhaling slowly out your mouth. And then one more time, inhaling through your nose. And exhaling through your mouth. Now see if you can change that breath to a completely nostril breath. So letting both the inhale and the exhale go through the nose. Try to use a very deep and fluid breath if you can. So you don't want to limit your breath to just an upper chest breath. You want to try to breathe up from your belly. Expand your belly, expand your chest, filling with air on that inhale, and then slowly letting it out on the exhale. And then we generally start these yin and restorative classes with a little meditation. So thinking about what you would like to manifest into your day. Now, if you're watching this live, it's getting to be toward the end of the day. It's just after 7:30. So maybe you want to think about what you would like to manifest into your tomorrow. What do you need today? And don't discount anything because it seems, frivolous or silly. What would you authentically like to manifest into your day? What really sits with you? And then start to build a picture of what that looks like. What do you look like when you have this? And maybe you asked for something tangible, maybe you asked for something intangible, but what does it look like? What do you look like when you have it? What do you feel like when you have it? Trying to make that picture more and more vivid. Some more details. In that picture that you created, do you hear anything? Are there any sounds? Are there any scents? Certain smell, maybe to where you're located? And then just overall feelings. Are you inside inside? Are you outside? Is there a breeze? And then just sitting here in that feeling, in that place for 2 minutes. Beginning to deepen your breath and bring yourself back. Switching legs when you feel ready. And just starting to circle your spine will bring a little bit of movement into our body. So we've got some yin poses tonight. We've got some restorative poses tonight. In both cases, we hold those poses much longer than you would in sort of what you would think of as a traditional yoga class. Each pose in yin and restorative is generally held for about 3 to 5 minutes. So it really allows you to experience a lot of depth in the pose and switch direction. So it's good, restorative is good if you want to rest and relax, sort of renew and refresh. And the yin really lets you get into a deep stretch and really, try to maintain some openness or some length for a little bit more of a significant period of time. And then holding it in the center. So for our first pose, we are going to go into a supported back bend with butterfly legs. So if you're fortunate enough to have yoga blocks, take your yoga blocks, set one up at the medium height and set one up at the high height. Now, if you're shorter or tighter, then you lower both of those to low and medium. Now, if you don't have yoga blocks, I would suggest taking a blanket or towel, rolling it, and using that as your medium block, and then putting like maybe 2 throw pillows for your high block. That'll work as a substitute. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to try to align our shoulder blades, that flat spot that you can feel moving that bone in the back with the block. And then you're going to place the back of your skull on the other block. And you want to get to a place, if you are using blocks, where it doesn't feel pinchy at all. This should feel fabulous. Your palms are upward facing unless there's a reason to not put them upward facing. The reason for that is your shoulders go into external rotation, your front body opens. And we tend to spend a lot of time, especially these days, hunched over our computers or maybe over steering wheels. This counterposes that, opens up that whole area, gives us space there. Now, you have options with your legs. If you're feeling tighter, you may want to bend your legs, plant your feet. This is a little milder. You may want to extend the legs. And sometimes people like to place a blanket on their upper thighs. And it's not always just, for warmth. Oftentimes it is for the weight and that feeling of really being grounded in your pose. You also have the option of bringing those feet together and those knees wide. And if you do this and it's uncomfortable for you, you can put a pillow underneath each outer leg and hang out here. But that grounding feeling, there's really something to it. If you haven't tried it, again, you may want to try it. I even have a friend who just literally bought grounding blankets for her children. And they're basically just, weighted blankets of type, but they're supposed to help calm people. So holding here, we're really paying attention to your breath. So you've obviously got a little bit of a back bend going on. And back bends by nature, as we mentioned, opened up the front body. If you decided to bring the bottom of those feet together and let those knees go wide, you're getting a little stretch through the hips and the thighs. Then either bending those legs and planting those feet or bringing those knees toward the midline, which will cause you to bend your legs and plant your feet, depending on where you started. And you decide, do you want to lift straight up or do you want to roll off the side and come up that way? Whatever makes more sense for you. And now we're going to transition into an all fours position. So you want to have those knees, if you have any existing knee discomfort. And line up those wrist creases parallel to the short end of the mat. Now, generally in a yin and restorative class, we don't do an extended cat-cow sequence. But today we will. We're not going to do it for 3 to 5 minutes, but we'll do it probably for 2 minutes, where we're going to let our heart center press forward, coming into that back bend. And then rooting down through those fingers and really expanding that back body. So, generally when we do this, we do one breath, one movement. We move on our inhale, we move on our exhale. This time we're going to do it just a little differently. I'm going to ask you if you go a little bit slower. Oftentimes we operate on high speed. And not that there's anything inherently wrong with high speed, except that sometimes we don't have time to be mindful. So, because we're moving so fast, we can't give things the level of attention, the level of detail that, maybe they should get. So in this case, something, as simple as moving here through cat and cow at a little slower and more observant pace than we usually do, might change the way that it feels. Can you get more expansion in the back body? Or can you get more expansion in the front body? And believe it or not, that was already 2 minutes. So just coming into a neutral spine. And then grabbing some blocks if you have them. Or you can use books. Or if you have sturdy boxes, you could use these sturdy boxes. Some people I know have even been using blocks of wood. Obviously it's probably going to be more comfortable if you put some blanket or a towel over the blocks of wood, but whatever you have hanging around your house. So we're going to come into a variation of child's pose. We're going to use these blocks. So what we're going to do is come forward and place your forearms on whatever, I'll call them blocks, but whatever you're using. And then letting your head rest either on your forearms or on those blocks, depending on what's comfortable for you. And coming into a variation of child's pose. So what hopefully you're finding here is a little bit more of an opening through the chest and maybe through the shoulders. So because of the height of the blocks, your front body is likely not resting on the floor. It's likely suspended, which is the idea. And you're allowing gravity to kind of take over. And rather than yanking you down, hopefully gravity is working a little bit more subtly in encouraging you down. That, coupled with your breath, and the ability of your breath to help you find space in the pose, should allow you to relax even more deeply into the pose. Now, inherently, one of the things about child's pose is that it usually will give you a little bit of a stretch too in your very low back. So in that sacral area, that little flat spot that you have at the base of your spine, and how you really exaggerate that stretch through that sacral area is to go into a pelvic tilt. So you're allowing your tailbone, your sitting bones to be heavy. The upper part of your pelvis may be a little higher than the lower part. And then slowly coming up out of this pose. And then following that pose up with yet another heart opener. Coming into a puppy dog pose. So, starting off in an all fours position, and then walking those hands forward. Now, if you are a tighter body, then your spine is pretty much going to be like a ramp. If you have a little bit more opening, you may be able to drop your heart center down toward the floor. And it's whatever is comfortable for you. So this pose may or may not feel like a little bit more work for you. And we won't have to stay here quite as long. But you want to try to allow yourself as much as you can to relax into the pose, rather than resist it. Of course, if it's painful, then you should resist, you should change position. But in some cases, maybe a deep breath will easily alleviate some of that discomfort. And then walking those hands back in to an all fours position. And now, grabbing hold of a block, or again, if you don't have a block, you can always grab a really large towel or a blanket. Now, basically, you're going to decide whether you want this to be at the medium height or you want it to be at the low height. I'm going to keep it on the medium height, but that may not work for you. And as I mentioned, if you were using like a block of wood and you want to cover it with something, I have a cork block. They tend to be really hard, so I'm going to put my blanket over it just for comfort. You're going to come into a side lying position where you're going to place your rib cage right atop of that block. And this really is most effective if, believe it or not, if it is something that is hard. It does encourage that release. But you should still feel something even if you are on something that's a little squishier. Now, I personally find with this one is that when I'm here in this position, I don't actually feel like I'm doing too much. I don't generally feel that release, but it is one that when I do come up and I transition to the other side, then I do feel that I do get the benefit of the pose. Your legs are in a comfortable position. For most people, that is bent to some degree, hinged at the hip, hinged at the knee. And you want to be high enough that you can use your hand as sort of a catch for your head. So you don't want to feel like you're forcing your head up in any way. You really just want your hand as something to rest your head on, just to catch your head on. Really allowing your rib cage to press into that surface. So you're really allowing it to release. You're not trying to, keep yourself propped up off of it or to hover over it or just a light touch in any way. Allow yourself to fall deeply into it. And then it's also like the block is returning that by pressing into your ribs. So it's like both your rib cage and your block are trying to get closer to the other, even when it seems like they are as close as they can get. And then bringing that lower hand to the floor and then using that arm to lift yourself up. And this is where hopefully if there was enough force probably isn't the right word, pressure, not a perfect word either, But if it was enough, you feel a little bit differently. Hopefully you feel like you can maybe even get more breath in that area. And then switching to the other side. So very same thing. Placing that side ribs, that area pretty much just under your armpit. Right on top of that block. Other than that, you're in a side lying position. Those hips are stacked, those legs are bent. And just allowing yourself the opportunity to release and relax. So I forgot to put it in the description, but I'll edit it after the video is done, is that this really overall a heart opening sequence. And then dropping that arm down, slowly lifting up off of your prop, and coming into a prone position. And coming into Sphinx. So bringing those elbows just under your shoulders or slightly ahead of your shoulders. Your forearms are parallelish to each other. Your thigh bones are parallel to each other. And your toes are all pointing behind you. Once you're here, you can think about pressing your shoulder blades forward. You can think about rooting down through all your knuckles, through all your fingers. So encouraging that heart center forward. Rest releasing. Obviously, if the back bend is too much, you can come out of this at any point and drop down and rest. Making sure that you don't collapse through your shoulder girdle. And then dropping down and resting your forehead on your forearms. This is one of my personal favorites, as a side note. And I'm going to say it's very, very basic. So you're going to take, I'll say your right leg, but you could start with either, and you're going to try to bring your knee up to about hip height so that your thigh bone ends up parallel to the short end of your mat. And then from there, all you're going to do is allow this hip to release. So allow your inner thigh to release, allow your hip to release. So just to stretch through your hip, your thigh, your groin. Sometimes people who have fatigue or sore low backs often report being delighted with this pose. As releasing those surrounding and stretching those surrounding areas really does seem to help. So once you're here a little, if you're not feeling like you're getting any sort of opening at all, you can think about sort of trying to stretch your knee away from your hips. Doing that will probably let your inner thigh open a little bit more and drop this hip down slightly, just a little closer to the floor. And then taking that one back to center. And switching sides. So you can just stay where you are. Just going to spin myself around. But taking that left knee out to the side, you want to try to get your knee high enough that your thigh bone becomes about parallel to the short end of the mat. Your shin bone ends up parallel to the long end of the mat. So some people call this Spider-Man pose. I guess it kind of is like Spider-Man looked when, he would scale up the building. It's another one where, as you're here, you don't really see any visible movement. Like if you were watching me, you would think that I was still. But in actuality, I may be making just little micro movements, maybe even, just millimeter movements, bringing that knee a little further away from the hip. Not in reality, but in the idea of continuing to press that knee away. By allowing that hip to fall toward the floor, releasing that hip, releasing that inner thigh. And then slowly bringing that leg back to the center. Bringing those thigh bones parallel to each other again. And now you choose. You can go back to Sphinx pose, which was the one with the elbows under the shoulders, or is our last little back bend. You can come up into, sometimes it's called Cobra, that's the common name, but sometimes in Yin it gets a special name. They call it Seal. And you can lengthen those arms. Now there's varying degrees that you can do this at. You can bring the arms a little further forward. And obviously there's less of a back bend. Some people can walk their hands in, further than mine are and still be very comfortable. Whatever position that you choose, you want to make sure that you can do it comfortably. You don't want your back to feel like it's compressed. If you feel like you're squishing your vertebrae and your low back together, then change your position. Also, if you're clenching your gluteals, then ease out of the position a little. Your glutes can engage a little bit, you just don't want to be gripping them. So as you're here, if you're comfortable doing so, pressing your heart center forward, pulling the heads of your shoulders back ever so slightly. If the back bend becomes painful, then abandon ship and come into a different position. And then slowly coming down. And placing your hands beside your ribs. Lifting yourself up and coming back into a supine position on that mat. So starting off in a knees bent, feet flat to the floor position, and then bringing your knees into your chest. So obviously we were just in a back bend. This is counterposing it. So sometimes we counterpose in child's pose. And sometimes we counterpose in a pose like this, just a knees to chest type pose. And then bringing those knees down to the floor and getting ready to go into final relaxation. So you want to find any position that is comfortable for you. Sometimes people like to put a bolster under their knees or under their feet. Again, sometimes people like to take, sometimes it's for the warmth, but sometimes it's just for the weight, and take a, fairly heavy blanket, or sometimes even people will put their blocks on top of their thighs to really just help ground them. And then bringing your arms by your side with your palms facing upward, unless there's a reason not to. And really allowing yourself to relax. So obviously the more we practice something, in theory, the more expert that we get. In the case of final relaxation, it's really common that when people start practicing yoga, that they have a difficult time with final relaxation. Sometimes they can't get comfortable, sometimes they fidget. But it's difficult for them to release and relax, especially in a somewhat instantaneous way. The yoga instructor says, okay, now we're going into final relaxation. And you take whatever amount of time you need to get your props and get in position. But overall, it is fairly quick. But over time, with practice, you don't feel like the process is necessarily so quick. You feel like it's easy for you to quickly come into final relaxation, that you can reach that place of comfort, that place of relaxation fairly quickly and more easily. Now, of course, you're going to have your days. There are going to be exceptions. It's not a hard, fast rule. But why is that helpful? Well, for one, think about, people who, if you have trouble relaxing at night, when it's time for you to go to sleep. Having that ability that we get from final relaxation in yoga, where we're able to let our mind relax, let our body relax, it really does transfer over. and bending your legs and planting your feet. And rolling over to one side and lifting up into a seated position. The light within me salutes the light within you. Namaste. Thank you for joining us. Especially thanks to those of you who participated, stuck with it. As you know, we love it when you comment, like, and share. And we put these videos, they're available on Facebook, and then we upload them to our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to that, you can look for Auburn Yoga and Pilates, and you'll get notified when we put a new upload there. So hope all is well, and we'll see you soon.